that big. are present. And item C, new and previous matters. New matters for introduction are the 2021 City of West Allis Mayor's Recommended Budget. Mayor Devine.
Thank you, Alderman Haas. Good evening, committee members. I know Alderman Rote and I came in this together, and a lot of you have been here for all 12 of my budgets, and I'm going to tell you right now, for the newer members, that I've never been able to come up here and just say, hey, this was an easy budget and it's a piece of cake. Once again, we were faced with a lot of challenges. We've had challenging years before, but none like this one. Beyond the revenue challenge, which has become chronic, I'm going to take this off so I don't steam up. We have a lot, as you could expect, of unanticipated costs relating to the battling of the pandemic and supporting staff and residents' health and safety. In addition to the pandemic, we were challenged by social unrest, not so much in our community, but as in our neighbors, where we have helped out. And above all, we have, as many of you are aware, a national election going on. And it's been a lot of extra work by our clerk's staff. So I want to thank all of our staff and all of our employees, specifically the health, the police, and the clerk staff, but all of them in adapting to these changes that we've had to put forward. So I think it's safe to say we're in pretty good shape in managing the fiscal situation during 2020, but I do have, and I think we all do have, concerns going forward long term. So looking at this budget, I will say there are 3 areas that I put priorities in. Long-term planning, prioritizing our neighborhoods and broadening our neighborhood associations, and continued economic development. And I just want to touch on a couple of the highlights, and then I'll turn things over, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, to our city administrator to go into a little bit more depth. First thing I want to touch on is Alderman Chaplesky worked on this, but we are going to be launching the Parks Subcommittee with 2021 goal of creating a preventative maintenance program for the city and getting a good grip on all of our parks and open spaces. The second thing I want to touch on falls under the city's strategic goal number 2, quality of life, and that is to work on creating a work group with various members of the committee to establish a long-term plan to provide resources and improve the quality of our senior programming in the city. The third thing I'd like to highlight is another work group being created, and that is to work with police department, fire department, the commission, city officials, health commissioner, and the fire chief to explore collaborative services in the delivery of health and medical services between the health and the fire department and look for synergies there. I want to, under citizen engagement, expand the role of our communication strategist and work on community engagement and project management duties there, including further coordinating the neighborhood associations. I also am looking to create the neighborhood improvement and community engagement program with existing staff. That would be mostly existing staff. That would be the NICE program, which would increase the quality of life, utilize our community development block grant funding for neighborhood programs and projects that will bring our neighborhoods and community closer together. With the departure of our community development director, John Stiebel, who will be missed, we are looking at tapping into the talent in that department. There are a lot of very skilled, very bright employees, and we're looking at fine-tuning the roles of that staff to utilize their strengths and their skills. We are also looking to move housing over to the health department because we feel that they will be able to also, I keep saying establishing some synchronization, but I think a lot of housing and health department services will work well together, and I think they'll be able to fine-tune working together. So those are just kind of some of the bigger highlights, and I just want to quickly once again thank all of our staff for adapting to this very bizarre 2020. And I also want to give a special thanks to Chris Moen, who's our interim finance director, as well as City Administrator Rebecca Grill for all of the coordination and oversight and input on this budget process. And I can either take questions towards the end, or if anyone has any questions right away. Okay,
Yeah, I don't see any questions. Have at it, Mayor.
all right, thank you. I'll turn things over to our City Administrator.
I'm Rebecca Grill. I'm the city administrator for the city of West Allis. I'm joined, as the mayor said, by Chris Moan, who's the interim finance director. I'm going to go over what is contained in the city budget, some high-level initiatives and things like that, and just explain the different priorities and demographics of the city. As you're familiar with, the city has mission and vision statements. From these, we've created 5 strategic goals: image, brand, destination, quality of life, citizen engagement, economic vitality, and excellence in government. So all of the budget business plans of the departments are focused on one of 5 of those goals. The first one that the budget contains is regarding the image, brand, and destination, and some of the things I'm going to talk about the mayor already mentioned. But one of the things we've been working on internally is implementing a My Government Online software program, which will allow people to apply online for their licenses and permits through the clerk's office, through the building inspection, and then expanding to other departments in the future. That way we're going to be creating a one-stop shop for residents and businesses going forward. So it'll be a little easier for people to negotiate the hoops that we have in city government. We're also going to be working on creating or enhancing the current programs to improve the residential main streets, facilitate tourism opportunities driven by the Artscape initiatives and the mural projects. We had a lot of momentum with those this year, despite the fact that the tourism industry and our hotel room tax was a fraction of what we estimated due to the COVID pandemic. The last item on this screen is, as the mayor mentioned, to focus on the parks and open spaces. Then there was success with the Better Block project last year, and we want to build on that with some similar strategies in different neighborhoods. And then working with all the departments to improve the parks, neighborhoods, and streets, to improve the image but be fiscally responsible, and then work on a long-term economic development strategic plan. For the quality of life priorities, continue collaboration with the school district to provide another school resource officer at Lane Intermediate, work with the landlords and city departments to reduce the need for interaction with rental properties, update the 10-year comprehensive plan, and the next 2, the mayor mentioned the work groups for the senior center and also the health and fire department. Under the 3rd goal of the strategic plan, it's citizen engagement. Some of these items you probably saw in our last year's budget, and a lot of them were derailed by COVID, so we weren't able to get to them. One of the things was the customer feedback and citizen feedback surveys, so that's again in the 2021 priorities. The expanded role of the strategists, working to expand our outreach to more of the citizens in the city by providing Spanish residence guides and other programming for Spanish-speaking population, creating the neighborhood improvement and community engagement program, and then implementing a digital ambassador program that is to expand our reach with our social media platforms, getting citizens engaged and sharing that information so that it's not just city staff. So growing what we currently have with that. Oops. Number 4 is economic vitality and sustainability, the budget priorities. The mayor mentioned this already. The development, planning and zoning, community improvement and neighborhood engagement programs. The continued implementation of the structural deficit work group. We spent a significant amount of time this year coming up with recommendations that were presented to the council. We've implemented a few of them already. One of them is the reduction in workforce program. We've had 15 people take part of that. It will be between now and the end of 2021. Supporting the expansion of the redevelopments that we have, building on the Allis Yards, Element 84, the West, and looking for other similar opportunities in the future. Having the building inspection and assessor's office work together for residential evaluation, improve the accuracy of the records. Looking at focusing on enterprise-wide risk management and our emergency government programs. While we don't have a complete program in place for emergency government, we've been operating under those things since about March 17th. So we're having live exercises in that for the last 7 months. Working with the police department to do electronic parking system. We spend a lot of staff's time in the police department and at City Hall with issuing parking permits for staff, for citizens, and we really like to get that online. There'll still be availability for people to come if they would like to come in, but there's a lot of people that would like to do it more online and also expand our payment processing where we accept the credit cards and things like that. For the last few years, we've used the retired squad cars for building inspection staff. I believe we have about 11 of them in use. We'll continue to utilize that and possibly move beyond building inspection. There's other departments that could utilize them. It doesn't always work well because some of the vehicles it's more costly to repair them, but then we get rid of those instead of spending a lot of time fixing them. And then the last item on this screen is the Friends of West Allis Park sponsorship program. We've been talking a lot about getting the sponsorship programs for boulevards, parks, just having also for our newsletter and the like, and that was one of the things we didn't get as far as we'd like to in 2020, so moving that forward in 2021. The last strategic goal is excellence in government. This slide, or this goal has 3 slides, so there's quite a few things for the excellence in government. I did mention before about the My Government Online software. We've been working to have the information available 24/7, our virtual City Hall complex, standardizing our process for people to get permits through the My Government Online, doing a live chat support on the city website during business hours. I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to utilize that on businesses where they will interact with you right on the screen and provide you information. There's a lot of people that would like to do that instead of calling or emailing. Collaborate across the departments for the allocation of CDBG funds for the current city priorities. I already mentioned the reorganization of staff in the development department and the moving of the housing to the health department. Then continue work with communications to improve community engagement, grow our volunteer program and the knowledge of city services and operations. One of the things we had as a goal in 2020 was to do a Citizen 101 program. We've done that with employees. We were able to do that one time in person this year. It was very beneficial to a lot of employees, and it will be likely as beneficial to citizens. There's a lot of things, inner workings in government that people might not know about, and participating in that kind of program helps them to understand why we're doing things. Some of the employees that participated have worked here for a few decades, and they were able to learn things that they didn't know. So it is very beneficial. Then strengthening the service delivery by revisioning activities of the outward-facing departments, notably the health, library, police, and fire, moving the zoning inspector position from building inspection to the planning and zoning program, sharing the building inspector with assessor, I mentioned that before, and then the consolidation of 6 positions to 3 and reclassifications in the health department, and then working with Public Works to grow their 2 program areas, electrical and grounds, and then an operations section that would oversee the superintendents. One of the things that COVID pandemic fast forwarded was the creation of the customer service center for the city. That was something that we had planned on looking towards in the next year or 2, but because of security and health and safety concerns, that was moved forward with the approval of the council. So we've been operating under that. I believe we started in the beginning of July. So that's been somewhat favorable for citizens, providing one area where they can go and get assistance. It is a learning curve for some people that are used to going department to department, but I think in the long run, people will learn to like it, or at least tolerate it. Other things we're working on is creating a comprehensive retiree benefit guide. The Human Resources Department has done that for active employees, expanding that to the retirees so that people are able to understand their benefits and presenting it in a way that's more understandable and in one place. Looking at creating a seasonal provisional recruiting approach. Right in the past, we had done spring provisionals, summer provisionals, fall provisionals, student workers, and those kind of things. Just doing that in one recruiting, but an ongoing thing. It's just one of those streamlining things. Working on finishing our brand, the web page for recruiting and our HR department. We have a document management system called DocuWare that we've been implementing. It's a very strong system. Once we get it up and running, we'll be able to use it to digitize processes and just find records a whole lot quicker. Recreate the employee handbook. I believe the last one was from 2010, which was before Act 10. So that's long overdue. Reduce time to fill the vacancies, and then revise a affirmative action and establish a workplace diversity program. Working on our wellness committee, and then starting a next generation leadership group. There's a lot of, in the next few years, there's a need for succession planning and growing leaders. We have a lot of really outstanding employees that have a lot of potential, and it is really important to grow them for when the next, for when this generation leaves, and so that we have a strong knowledge base going forward. Work with the staff to continue implementing the structural deficit recommendations, and then 2021 is the last year of the strategic plan, so we need to look at revising that or refreshing it based on the resident survey we did last year. And then the last item was the city clerk, changing the city clerk to a deputy city clerk position. So those are all the things that are in the budget, and then the next slides are more of the technical components of the budget, just an overview. So we say that we have these same challenges over and over. We have the taxpayer financial limitations. We are limited by our participation in the expenditure restraint program. I'll explain that a little bit more in the subsequent slides. We're always competing with other municipalities as well as the private sector to recruit and retain high-quality employees. We have significant maintenance needs for all of our buildings. You're familiar with that when we had the facility study. Also, we have a lot of our aging infrastructure, the roads, sewers, the street lights, which need to be replaced, and then lastly, the levy limit. But typically, we haven't had to worry about that in the city because we're up against the expenditure restraint limit first. Here's some of the demographics of the city. So when we talk about the taxpayer limitations, the median household income is $50,000. The per capita income is about $28,000. The age is around 40. Median age is 40, and then 62% are white collar, 23 blue collar, and 16 services. We also have 34% of the people that are high school graduates, and then 25 with some bachelor's or graduate degree. This is a little bit more different way to display this as far as the educational component, but I think on this slide the more interesting part is the breakup between the generations. You can see how it's broken down from the silent and greatest generation down to the Gen Alpha, which I guess is the new term for people after Gen Z. But most of the population in West Allis is between 18 and 65. This is the trend of our population. For 2020, the estimate from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue is 59,517, which is down a few hundred from 59,780 in 2019. Hopefully, once the census is complete, maybe we'll have a readjustment of that population, but since 2012, we've been having it going down each year. The expenditure restraint program, many of you are familiar with that, but I just want to go over it a little bit. It's provided from the state to limit how much our budget grows each year. It's calculated based on a formula. It cannot exceed the inflation rate, adjusted by the growth in our municipal property values. Being a built-up city, there's limited growth, which is why the redevelopment is very important here. The current estimate for the limit this year is $1.352 million. If we remain in that limit, the estimate is to receive $1.59 million, or approximately 2.16% of our general fund budget. We won't receive the final number until the end of October, beginning of November, which makes it a little challenging to put together a budget. But Chris and I worked to put a pretty conservative budget together. So it was much different than last year. We had a much less of a gap when we started. Last year when we started, we had a $4 million gap. This year there was one less zero. So 400,000, so it was a lot easier to fill that gap with the help of the departments and Chris. So what does the expenditure restraint program mean? It means that in order to participate it, we can't increase the budget by more than 1.352 million. So in 2020, the general fund budget was 62,689,500. That should be a comma there. And then, so in 2021, it cannot exceed 64,051,114. One of the other challenges we have, as I mentioned, is the retention of the high quality workforce and recruiting. Overall, we have 665 total positions. 104 of them are not benefited. The benefited positions are 560, a little over that. We actually have moved down from 2020. We were almost at 574, so we're down about 13 positions, partially due to the reduction in workforce, but also looking at different ways of utilizing positions differently when people leave and things like that. So we've been able to reduce that because the most costly part of the budget is salary and benefits. So there's 524 general fund positions, and then about 50 of them are funded through other funding sources like grants and things like that. As I mentioned, salary and benefits make up the most part of our budget. In 2020, the salaries were 34 million, and then this year they're going over by a little bit over 35 million. The health and benefits, dental benefits for active employees is about 9.6 million. It's going up to 9.7. I should note that we're very optimistic that there will be a very minimal or flat with no increase for the health cost next year. So we're just finalizing that with our health consultant, but we're pretty comfortable based on the COVID impact, but also there were a lot of plan changes that were done last year that were very, has helped us keep those costs down. And then the retiree benefits are at 1.4 million. Here's just an illustration of personnel by the function of our budget is split up into 4 different categories: public safety, engineering, public works, general government, and health, culture, and recreation. So about 50% of the personnel is in public safety. And then this is just a little explanation about levy limits. I'm not really going to get too much into this because it doesn't really impact the city of West Allis. So I want to go over a little bit about the revenues that we receive from various sources. We get taxes, about $40 million through real estate, room tax, sales tax, the payment in lieu of taxes. Then we also get intergovernmental grants and aids from the state. All of them are listed there. We receive revenues from licenses, permits, and other fees. and then penalties and forfeitures, and then various miscellaneous service transfers, reserve funds, and capital projects. So the majority of the revenues are from taxes and real estate taxes from the citizens. We've tried to work with the state legislature to change the funding structure in the state, but so far we haven't been successful in doing that. The state of Wisconsin is one of the states that relies mostly on real estate taxes, which is challenging because of the impact on the citizens, but also the desire for the services. This is just a illustration of where it comes from. Like I said before, most of it comes from taxes. And then the expenditures, the budget, where the money is being spent, the programs. Explained before the different categories. So the general government is about $11 million. Public safety is almost $36 million, and then health, culture, and recreation is a little over $4.5 million. And then these are other expenditures that are not in the general fund. We have special revenue funds or enterprise funds, capital, internal service funds. So this shows you where the money goes. As I mentioned before, the public safety is the largest area where the funding goes to. And this is overall a fact sheet of what is contained in the budget as far as numbers. We highlighted the area that people are most concerned about, rightly so. The impact on the average homeowner, $150,000 home. And I put estimate 2 times because this is subject to change based on what the tax rate might be, but there's an estimate that the increase would be about $50 for the average homeowner. And this is just some background information in probably the areas of interest. Most interest would be in the right column, the tax rates, and then the expenditures since 2012. Krista, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, well, I'll just kind of one overarching kind of comment. As the mayor said at the beginning, how challenging this year has been, and just how different 2020 has been. What's always interesting to me is from a numbers standpoint, our budget doesn't change a whole lot from one year to the next. And as Rebecca mentioned about the revenues there, when you see the largest portion of our revenues is property taxes, and then after that is intergovernmental revenues. That's basically shared revenues that we get from the state. The state has a lot of control over kind of what our budget is and what it can do from one year to the next. So as many different things as you're seeing in terms of ideas and plans for the future, that's really done with the same pool of dollars, just kind of a reallocation of how those dollars are spent and prioritized from one year to the next. So again, just kind of a general comment about there's not a whole lot of, well, as much flexibility as there is from a programming standpoint and priority standpoint, it's still not a lot of different dollars to work with. We're still always up against that expenditure restraint limit, where the state basically says our budget can only grow, a certain amount, and then the same thing from the tax levy standpoint. It's just hard to move that needle much in terms of even when we find new revenues to help from a tax rate and tax levy standpoint, It's just such a small part of the equation. So again, those are just kind of my general comments on kind of the numbers side of it. But if you have any questions, certainly be happy to answer those.
This slide is just outlining the next steps. The meeting tonight was more of a way to introduce people to the budget. Obviously, we haven't had time to dig into the more than 800 pages. I will note, though, that there's a significant portion that has to do with the capital improvement plan, which is about this much. So that's probably, if you've been part of the capital improvement process, you might not need to read those 350 pages. So I think we're going to have the meeting on the 27th
Correct.
at 6 p.m.
Tuesday, October 27th at 6 p.m. is what we're looking at for our next meeting, despite what it says on that slide. Because
We'll be waiting for the information from the state, and then we'll be able to better calculate the tax rate, collect additional information, have the public hearing, and then on November 4th, and then hopefully the council will consider the budget on November 17th. At this time, that concludes the presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or the mayor, or Chris, or any one of us. Or if you would like to meet with me or any one of us during the next week, please contact me. We can set something up.
All right, thank you, Ms. Grill. Any questions for the mayor, for Ms. Grill? All right. And then, again, to confirm, I talked with everyone on the Administration and Finance Committee committee, but yeah, again, our next meeting will be next week, Tuesday, October 27th at 6 p.m. I'm right back here again. Is there anything else to properly come before the committee? And then can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.